Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Police and Crime panel. Please note that the proceedings at this meeting are that at the moment will be recording and streamed live. Before we proceed, I would like to bring to your attention some housekeeping. So we're not expecting any fire alarms at the moment. So if we do, if everyone could congregate down the stairs to the main entrance, that would be helpful. And secondly, if you wish to speak during the meeting, I would ask that you raise your hand or press your button when speaking as well, so everyone can hear you, and I will invite you to speak. Okay, everyone happy? Okay, moving on to item 1 is apologies. I shall hand over to Jake to read out any apologies, please.
Thank you, Chair. Apologies received from Councillor Ewings, Councillor Roger, Councillor German, and Caroline Jones, our independent member for Cornwall.
Moving to item, sorry.
Chair, just let you know, Councillor Lever's just arrived. She'll be in any minute.
Thank you very much. Moving on to item 2 is the minutes. Has everyone had the opportunity to read the minutes? Do I have any alterations to the minutes? No. And then do I have any seconder? A seconder, sorry. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Thomas. Okay, moving on to item 3, declarations of interest. Please can you raise your hands if you have any declarations of interest? Councillor Ashton?
For transparency, just to say that my daughter works in Exeter. She works as a digital forensic member of staff, so far removed from where we are, but nevertheless it needs to be recorded.
Anybody else have any declarations of interest? No, thank you. So we'll swiftly move on to item 4, which is public questions, and today we have no public questions. So moving on to item 5, if everyone's happy, I would like to hand over to the Commissioner to present the report of the contact service update, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Good morning, everyone. It's a little bit chilly in here, so let's hope there isn't a fire, but I wouldn't mind a little bit of warmth this morning. So I really appreciate panel wanting to ensure we keep monitoring and have oversight of the contact function of Devon and Cornwall Police. And one of the reasons for that is many years ago we used to look at it a lot, then we didn't, and it's now time to keep it back on the agenda, especially since the performance has improved so dramatically, to keep the pressure and to keep the visibility of what's happening in that department, I think is really helpful. The first thing I'll say is I want to give a thank you to some of the senior leadership who've been overseeing the public contact in Assistant Chief Constable Nikki Leeper, who some of you will know. There's also the senior police staff, which is Lucy Bailey, who oversees all 3 elements of the team, and also Dan Thorogood, who is the head of public contact. This has been no mean feat to get to the performance that we're at today, with a level of investment and senior leadership that has been put towards it. As you know, one of the causes for concern when the force went into the engage monitoring by His Majesty's Inspectorate, it was largely around the management of some of the contact, whether that was the emergency or non-emergency calls. And if you can see, some of the things that have really improved and are starting to show sustainability is the 999 call handling, improving the speed in which that is answered. We are talking seconds here between a really great force answering 999 and the one at the bottom. So it's literally seconds is the difference. It's not minutes. It's very small portions of time. But you'll see that the rankings nationally, because the government do a ranking league table on 999. And one of the issues that we found when they started to monitor that performance was that forces were measuring the performance at the moment it landed with the force, not the moment the caller called 999 and it goes through the BT interchange. So these seconds whether it took longer to hand over to a force, these weren't being measured until the government, because they run the contract, actually let us see the full picture of a customer experience. So now they actually measure it, and there's a standardisation way in which all forces are measured on 999. In the early days of that, Devon and Cornwall Police were at the bottom of the league table, 35 out of 44 forces, and now they're ranked 19th out of 44. And actually, it can fluctuate. One month they can be first, and the next month they might be third on the list. It fluctuates quite a lot, but you can see that's quite a shift that is being sustained by the force. The other area is our 101 non-emergency number, and we had many years where there was a very lengthy delay on that telephone line, and our job as elected members is to actually bust that myth that it doesn't take 45 minutes to get through on that non-emergency line anymore. And what you can see is that there's been more calls going through on that 101 line. So there's been an increase of 11.8% on the number of calls received in the previous year. But you'll also see one of the biggest successes is a massive reduction in the abandonment rate. So it used to be 60% people would give up ringing on 101 because of the length of time. And that abandonment rate is getting really low now. We're down to sort of around the 5%. I've set that as a target because His Majesty's Inspectorate are really keen to see forces standardise around some of that. So there's still a push to really get to only 5%, but it gives confidence that people who are ringing are getting through to the police, and more people are actually getting through to the police now than we did even in the past year. One of the ideas that panel had, if you remember Councillor Crode, former chairman of the panel, used to nag me consistently about why don't you just have a callback function so that if people can't get through, you promise that you'll ring them back in a short period of time. That got introduced in September 2023. The software allowed that ability for that to happen, and that really helps during a busy time to help make sure that people don't feel like they're not being listened to or have to hang on for long periods of time when we've got an influx. Like, for example, if there's a massive crash on the motorway, we will have an influx of people ringing 101, which can delay people getting through. So the callback function's been quite successful, and they are just testing at the moment actually direct video contact with domestic abuse victims through the contact centre as well. Still very early days of that trial, but other forces are doing it, and it's about getting that immediate contact and reassurance. The other thing that I will just add, as you know, I've got a target of 10 minutes in terms of 101, and we're just starting to get there in terms of some consistency. At one point, the force thought they could make 5 minutes. I thought they were being slightly over-ambitious, so I'm being realistic that I think 10 minutes and a low abandonment rate gives me reassurance that people will hang on. So I just sort of to give you the two ends of the spectrum. They're clearly willing to hang on for 10 because the abandonment rate's gone right down so low. And then just finally to say, police inquiry offices that we've been opening over the past sort of 3 years, have been really welcomed by the community. I think the investment in those communities to feel that the police are on their side has been welcomed. We've got a few more to consider reopening, which we will finalise and let you know. As you know, Exmouth, whatever the solution for Exmouth is, it will have a police inquiry office in it. And we are just considering what the next one is. And I know I'm visiting Launceston as well very soon, so I will see Councillor Chopak, and I'm sure we'll have a very lengthy conversation about that one too. So that's a sort of highlight for you of the shift in the performance from 45 minutes on average to getting to 10 minutes, abandonment rate from 60% almost to 5%, and an increase actually in the calls that are getting through. So a positive picture around on performance of public contact. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Councillor Ashton, please.
Thank you. What a great start to the panel meeting, and I don't know whether, well, there's not much we can say except to say well done. And for me, I would encourage us as a panel to send a message back to your team, through your team, to say this is really good progress. And having said that, of course, standards have to be maintained, despite, this is very clearly going in the right direction. And I agree with you about the abandonment rates as well, because word of mouth does have a big impact in our communities, doesn't it? That's how things sort of pass on from one person to another. So I think that's really good. But I do think it would be worth a positive message back, Chair, to those people that are working in these areas to say well done, and we look forward to seeing further improvements, and I think our communities will respond well to that. But of course, as I say, we've still got to maintain those standards going forward under very difficult circumstances. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Ashton. And yeah, I certainly agree. We do need something sent back from a panel point of view. Gordon's next on my list.
Thank you. Councillor Czapieski, Devon District. Equally, I'd like to commend you on the progress that's been made. It's very encouraging, going in the right direction. And I hope you might become a victim of your own success. And let me just expand on that. The emphasis obviously is on emergencies. I'm looking lower down the spectrum and to the future. If my comment was about if people have more confidence and give more information, then our system is going to suffer then from potentially from overload. I would also like your opinion on your view on Heinrich's safety triangle, in as much as low-level information being gathered contributes to building a picture which can prevent crimes in the future. So the first part of my question is, are we equipped to expand if the amount of information comes in? And are we able to pass that information onto the agencies, detectives, groups, who will then be able to use the increase in the information coming in, which will give them more work to do, but will give them a better quality of product? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. And we'll certainly pass on your regards to those who have made such an effort to improve this part of the department. It's been quite a painful, difficult journey to get there. One of the things I will say, the police would be overwhelmed if everybody reported everything they ever saw at every time of the day, 24/7. And this is why there's a few things that you'll see later on in the report. There's been an increase in crime. As you can imagine, we've had much more, 24,000 more people ringing in to tell the police something since they've been able to answer the phone in a much more timely manner. But one of the things that's happening, so as you may be aware, we've been encouraging people to report shoplifting. So in austerity, policing basically said we'll only come if there's an aggravated offence with it, like an assault of a shop worker. So often the shops weren't reporting it to the police, half of the shoplifting that was going on. And we were always the lowest crime rate for shoplifting in the country and had been for decades. One of the things that we want with the businesses starting to report all their shoplifting is we've created a system for them. It's the UK Partners Against Crime, which I've started to implement. It started in Torquay, Torbay, it's gone to Teignmouth, we've got Saltash, Liskeard. It's really starting to reach out. And Plymouth Partners Against Retail Crime are taking on the same system. This enables them to put in lots of information that can then be filtered, and the stuff that's actionable can be pulled out. So actually what we need to do is help people give us all that information, and we need tools that enable the police to act instead of being overwhelmed. And that's why I'd really like more businesses anywhere to start signing up to this UK PAC system that we've got, because it will really give us a rich picture, particularly of intelligence around shoplifting, antisocial behaviour and drug dealing in our towns and cities and in our nighttime economy. So I think there's some real opportunity there. We're working in partnership with the organisation, which is a cooperative. It's a not-for-profit organisation, but they've got some very slick systems in the background that really help. And within the first couple of months of the Torquay businesses starting to sign up to it, we had a conviction of a prolific shoplifter because all the information was obtained within that system, written about that one offender, whereas when you report it into the police, they've got to link it all up. So it's actually a system that does it for us. So yes, we would be overwhelmed if everybody reported everything, but we also use Crime Stoppers as a tool as well. So anonymous if you wanted to, but you don't have to be through Crime Stoppers. And they will filter what is actionable information for the police. So again, there's some really good elements around working with other partners to enable it. And obviously local authorities who will get reports, and they know which ones are relevant to the police to deal with rather than the councils. So yeah, I think there's some work to do about how we manage that going forward. And also we've got the recruitment, as you may have seen, of more police community support officers. That is going to increase the level of intelligence of what's going on in our communities to Devon and Cornwall Police. So there's 49 extra police community support officers being recruited. So that's going to make a big difference as well. But I think it's the management of the systems that we need to get better at. And there is definitely some more technology solutions in the control room. But but that will go as they develop. We will move with the times in some of that.
Thank you. Councillor Wright.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just to echo the thanks for all the work that's gone into doing this. It has been something that on the panel we were nagging about for quite some time, and to see the effect now of this data is really, really good, and good for the members of the public. Picking up on the other question in your answer, because I was going to ask about the double-edged sword of this data. It's obviously more people reporting, so then the crime rates actually go up in reported crime. So you've spoken about that and covered what I was going to ask. Just one more question though. What can your office do to maybe release some really positive comms on this? Because I've had people contact me last night. I had to prepare an answer to a question in Exeter about alarm at the rising crime rate in Exeter. But when you look at it and break it down, as you said, a big chunk of that is shoplifting that's being actioned. People are being arrested and prosecuted, whereas before they weren't. But I think it would really help, because there's information that's come out. It was in Devon Live, Express and Echo, Exeter being one of the most dangerous places to live, which isn't the case, followed by Plymouth and Torbay. That's really not good for us, and it's a false perception, I think, of how our cities are. So that was my question. Could your office maybe start putting some comms out for that? Thank you.
Chair, I think it would be helpful to have a conversation about what we could do about that, because we've realised on the Torquay focus work that we've done, we've just put out a lot of negative publicity about Torquay, because I've gone in there to help with antisocial behaviour, investment in frontline policing, and actually there's some really positive things that's going on in Torquay. New businesses are opening up in that area that's been quite a high crime area, so there's some real grass shoots, but so we need to work out a positive way in which we talk about some of this, because there is a lot of positive. I think in the first instance, most people, if they wanted to, they could go and have a look on the police.uk website and see their own street and see what crimes have been happening where they live. So there's a lot of detailed information in the public domain now, which could be alarming if you didn't understand the context. Let's have an offline conversation, because you're right. We also had an issue in Teignmouth where the Daily Mail issued an article about a beach that was the most crime-ridden beach in the whole of the country, but it was completely taken out of proportion, and it was about how it was dotted on a map, and the crime was linked to it, but it wasn't exactly. That's exactly where it was. So I think it'd be good to have an offline conversation about how we do that more positively, because I'm not alarmed at the moment at the crime rate. I'm not alarmed like we all need to immediately there's a crisis, but it is growing, and it has been growing. We know violent crime has been growing for years. We know our young people have been growing as victims of crime. So I think there is still an element where we need to focus, but I think we need to reassure people at the same time where it's not to be worried about.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Thomas.
Thank you, Chair. Commissioner, you referred to the slightly ambitious target the police had set themselves around 101, the 75. It occurs to me that usually when you set yourself a target, you set it because you think you're going to be able to hit it. And obviously that target will work with your target of 90% as well in 10 minutes. So I just wonder, do you have any figures as to how close the police are getting to their own 75% in 5-minute target?
I suppose the first thing to say, under previous chief constables, they wanted a 20-minute target and they wouldn't even agree to that. So firstly...
Accept the progress, absolutely.
Yeah, so I'm saying we're in such a different place right now in terms of focus on customer service and expectations of the public and trying to meet them. To be fair, I think the trouble with the performance is it fluctuates. So you cannot get a stable that it'll always be like that. The fluctuation causes then the change in how well they're answering the phone. I know that the Assistant Chief Constable, Nikki Leaper's always trying harder to do more and get more out of her team and get more out of the systems that we've got. But I think I'm just trying to be realistic for them, because the reality is, as Chair, as you probably would know, we haven't got millions of pounds more to invest in this service. So I think it's about getting it to a stable state. It's about being realistic and being good enough for the community to have the confidence to report. And that's getting that balance right is where we're at the moment. We just don't have millions more to invest in this element of the departments.
Thank you, Commissioner. In which case, is it helpful to have two separate targets? Would it not be more sensible for the Chief Constable to accept that your targets are probably more deliverable, measurable, manageable, and perhaps having two separate targets is you know, in terms of you having a 90%, you know, within 10 minutes and him having a 75% within 5 minutes, would it make more sense, based on what you're saying, just to have the one target?
If I'm really frank about police performance, they like to look good. So saying they've answered something in 5 minutes sounds much better than saying they've answered it within 10, even though it's 75%. I'm only measuring them. I'm only going to hold the chief to account for 90% within 10 minutes. So chief and the team can talk about all the different types of performance they want to talk about. I'm only going to hold them to account for that element.
Councillor German. Sorry, Councillor Hodges. Sorry, I'm trying to read all different.
Sorry, I'm two
They're
people.
not very clear, the name plate, so I do apologise.
My question really about comms has sort of been asked, but I think it'd be really great if this positive news can be got out to communities, because it really does bust a bit of a myth and helps to inspire a bit more confidence, and that's so important. And I'd also, just to add to that, it is really worth going to, for example, Exeter and having a look around the comm centre there and meeting some of the team. I've done that a couple of times, and it's really inspiring, and that team works so hard. It's amazing. It's phenomenal. And to see it all in action, it's brilliant. Thank you.
Thank you, and apologies again. Councillor Penberthy.
Thank you, Chair. Commissioner, first of all, congratulations. I think I've been talking about this since 2013 at this panel. So I think probably before anyone else on this panel was here. So it's good to see progress at last. One of the things I know that a lot of people are talking about now is channel shift. And I'm thinking about 101 specifically, where we've now still got 80% of the stuff coming through on a phone call, which is not necessarily the most effective way of handling information. I just wondered though, whether there needs to be some thought given to the online system. Community organisation I chair, which actually has a big chunk of Union Street in its ownership and has a lot of problems. It was in one of the hotspot areas because of the nature of drugs, alcohol, rough sleeping, and social behaviour, and was using 101 online reporting a lot. It was taking a lot of time to report things because of the amount of stages to go through. I just wonder whether there's some way that could be improved. So whether there's a first stage and then a follow-up stage or something to encourage more people to use one-on-one online reporting for those things that don't need a phone call. It's cheaper for people ringing in. It will take pressure off your call centre and will enable you to do some potential initial triaging rather than everything all being there all up front. So it was just a sort of suggestion as to how it might get some further improvement and do some modal shift at the same time. Thanks.
Thank you, Chair. One of the challenges it's called Single Online Home. It is a national police system and a national police website to standardise the way in which you report to every police force across the country. So we're not in control of how it looks and feels so much, and we're certainly not in control of the standard of information that's required to be in there. What I will say, though, is many people don't fill out all the elements in the form, and so there is often follow-up. So they often can be quite vague, and it will require, and often it will be a police inquiry officer in a front office who will actually do the follow-up with them if they're not busy speaking to people face-to-face. So we had a massive channel shift. If you recall, back in the day, we did an email address for 101. It was our first attempt at a channel shift to online. But because people were being so vague in the email and wouldn't give the right information, it meant lots of work was being created on the back of it. So that's why the government have funded the Home Office, the digital public contact with Single Online Home, and standardised it. So now we try and get as much information as possible so that they know they can act quicker. But I completely understand. It is a little bit clunky. And it does take the time, but I think if you've got particularly those businesses on Union Street, at the Barbican and all that really busy spot, if the new system that's coming in, not the disc system that they've been using, but this new UK pack will revolutionise what's happening. So I think it'll be quite positive to reduce some of that traffic going through 101.
I think it was for those people who are not necessarily retail, so it's not about shoplifting. So, yeah, the Millfields Trust, it's community spaces, office spaces, but basically they own everything between Lidl and Aldi. And so it's a big chunk, and it's got the George near. So, but for people like that who are trying to make sure that you have the information, effectively, I know they've stopped reporting stuff because it was taking effectively a member of staff half a week of their work to make sure that you had the uploaded CCTV and all the other stuff. So it's that sort of thing where actually people trying to do the right thing is potentially meaning that some of those areas which are hotspots, no longer hotspot policed, are going to have less of the data, which then causes some issues. So it's just some of the practicalities, and I don't know whether there's something that needs to be thought about maybe for those people who've got sort of some of those more business and community estates which aren't retail, in terms of how they might be able to report rather than just shoplifting.
Chairman, they can join the UK PAC system, charities, voluntary groups that are on there, they can join it as well. And it isn't just for shoplifting. I mean, that's the first thing we're starting to use it for. It's for antisocial behaviour. They can certainly join up to that scheme. It's free for charities and voluntary groups as well in the long term.
Maybe that's something to get promoted out as well then, because they would not necessarily pick things up through the usual business link type stuff.
Thank you. And the last speaker on this item is Councillor Lever.
Thank you, Chair. Excuse me. First of all, we all welcome the improvement in pick-up times and so on and so forth, and like others, I'd like to extend thanks to all officers who've helped make that happen. I think for me, listening to some of the contributions from other councillors at this meeting, I think the comms bit is quite important, and you know, there is certainly something about the perception of the police and the police's ability to be able to attend once calls have been made. So Exeter was mentioned, certainly anecdotally, and I don't know how one deals with this in targets or anything, but in terms of comms and the perception of the ability to deal with problems, the perception is really there, and I think it's justified that actually it's pretty dangerous if you happen not to be white. You know, only last week we had a clearly racially motivated attack on a Turkish guy, I think. Anyway, with guys with masks and so on and so forth. We're hearing quite a lot of anecdotal reports about people who are perhaps non-binary being, frankly, quite physically frightened in the middle of Exeter. And I don't quite know how that translates into what one can do in terms of comms or so on. You know, this particular report about targets, but I suppose the other thought that comes to me is that, you know, we've seen in recent weeks an increase in, you know, incidents of perhaps far right wing activity, particularly around the asylum seekers hotels. I'm thinking particularly of the one in East Devon, where, you know, we have seen an increase in conflict. Now, this isn't about you know, the 999 calls, so maybe this is the wrong bit of the meeting to raise this in, but I'm wondering if there are targets or there is potential for targets to look at things like the response rate to calls that come in around those kind of particular hate-fueled crimes, and if indeed those are recorded in that way. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. There's a few things that I can answer, particularly under this report. If you call 999, they obviously do a prioritisation process, and they won't attend every 999. They'll attend where there's threat to life or all of those sorts of things. But the Chief Constable, James Vaughan, is absolutely determined to push as many officers back to the front line into patrol and neighbourhood than we've ever done before. We think sort of mentioned it that we're reducing the ranks, so we've dropped an assistant chief constable, we're dropping the number of chief superintendents, we're dropping the number of superintendents, and it's going all the way down to the front line to get as many officers back out on patrol and in neighbourhood. And I think that will change what they attend on 999. It's really difficult, and they'll attend the high end. So I think there'll be an opportunity, and his timeframes are, he's got a number that he wants to meet by December, and he's got another tranche that he wants to meet by sort of the beginning of the next financial year. But we'll talk with you about what he's done on that, and we'll probably bring it up at the budget meeting because the Chief Constable will be here. But he is doing something that is not something that will be well liked as a Chief Constable, moving people into the jobs that they don't do anymore. But he's also being welcomed by the front line, that he's been listening to them because they've been so busy and overwhelmed. And I'm sure many of you know with your local policing teams, they are often overwhelmed with what they're dealing with. So I think that will show a shift in terms of how often and what they will attend on a 999 call. Secondly, just to say in terms of if someone feels unsafe and threat to life, and especially if it was a targeted racial or sexuality attack, the police would come. In my view, that should be a priority. So I think for us, especially if you've got people where the police haven't attended and they haven't followed up with that victim, I'd like to know about that. Yeah, definitely like to know about that. And yes, we have got a lot of tension in our communities, and I think we've all got a collective job between us to help manage that tension that's going on in our communities. And the police will do what they need to do from a law perspective, a lawful perspective of policing protests, of doing some engagement events with people who feel threatened. But we've also got a job, I think, as all of us as elected members, to try and ensure that our community feels safe and that we're doing all we can to help those who are particularly vulnerable, not to feel afraid to walk down Exeter High Street or Exmouth High Street or Plymouth city centre. And I know we do all work really hard trying to do that, but I think we have got a job ourselves, I think, over the next few years to try and help with some of those, shall I use the term, toxic politics that seems to be sort of growing, and it's not of any particular group. It's coming up, resonating from our communities that are frustrated, and we need to make sure that we're sort of on top of that, as I think, as elected members.
Okay.
Thank you.
Councillor Lever, maybe it's in the response rate we could probably put on our work programme.
I'm sorry, Chair. Is there any chance you could move your microphone closer to you so I can actually hear you? Thank you.
There you go. More or less eating it now. Yeah, maybe we could put that on our work programme if you want to, maybe at the end of the meeting. What I'm going to do is we're now running it over. I'm a stickler for trying to keep to time. I have Kevin and Councillor Loudon. Can I ask that it's a straight question and a straight answer, please, because I want to be able to give enough time to the other items on our agendas today, please. So, Kevin, if you would like to ask your question, please.
Thank you, sir. Morning, Commissioner. How much of a priority do you feel artificial intelligence should be given in, I would say, 101, for example? It's a technology that could be very user-friendly and fast. I don't feel it would be appropriate for 999 calls. The last thing anybody wants to do in an emergency is talk to a computer and have soothing music played at them. But 101 is a different kettle of fish, and it could tackle those abandoned call routes. What are your views on how appropriate it would be to use artificial intelligence?
Thank you, Chair. I mean, firstly, I'll say in terms of information and communications technology in policing, while they might have all the high end to do all of the difficult crimes that they're looking at, they certainly don't have the high end to run the organisation in the same way. We're often, as an organisation, behind local authorities. You're usually way ahead of us in terms of what you can do, and a lot of it is to do with the firewalls and what they are allowed to use as systems. They have definitely had national conversations about AI and how it can be exploited for policing. I haven't had a proposal put in front of me where the police need investment yet for artificial intelligence that they can't do within their own budget, but there is a lot of elements around the governance of AI in the public sector that we do need to think about, and particularly in policing. One of the challenges is to ensure disproportionality doesn't happen, especially around live facial recognition, and there's been quite a lot of scrutiny around that nationally. But at the moment, I haven't had a proposal put before me. I do know they're discussing it nationally, and it probably will be an option at some point in the near future.
Thank you. Councillor Loudon.
Thank you, Commissioner. I was pleased to hear you make a plea for more tolerance and for people basically to dial it down. What I would ask you to do is if you would write to all of the main political parties in the region expressing that view. And I say that because I look at my parliamentary constituency, and we've got a turf war between your party and the insurgent party around an asylum hotel and just ramping it up. So anything you can do to write to all of the main parties expressing that view, I would be very grateful.
Thank you, Councillor Loudon. It doesn't actually come under the contact agenda, but okay, noted, Commissioner.
Chair, just to say, I'm not sure political parties would listen to me. I'm looking to you as members of the Police and Crime Panel, where we've all got a particular role to play. But I completely understand where you're coming from on that comment.
Okay, thank you. I've noted a couple of recommendations down. If you will allow me to suggest my recommendations. I've got a recommendation of the panel sends a thank you letter to everybody, so it's a formally done, and also there was lots of comms was mentioned, so a recommendation on comms. Does anybody else have any other recommendations that they would like to make on this item, please?
I was going to say, can I second you on both of those? Thank you.
I see silence. So if we're happy with those recommendations, then Jake, if you could make that note, please. Thank you. Now we're going to move on to item 6, which is the estate strategy. Commissioner, can I just ask that you keep it very brief, because I know there will be an awful lot of questions that I would like members to be able to ask. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. It's probably useful just to give you just a slight overview of some of the things. There's some of it, most of it is in the paper, in the briefing, but just to let you know really clearly, policing gets no capital funding from the government at all. So anything that we do from a capital perspective will be used to take off policing, to use as revenue funding, or borrowing and then spending the revenue funding to pay the loan back. So there is no capital funding at all in policing. We've got 146 buildings worth about £178 million of that portfolio. I'm responsible for all of the buildings in this role. We've got police stations, some which have a front desk, some which don't, some which have custody suites, some which don't. We've got police offices that are not public necessarily buildings. We've got some that are discreet, some that are covert, and some that are overt. So there are some buildings that people won't know policing is using them. Recently, just to say, His Majesty's Inspectorate of Constabulary and Fire and Rescue Services has just done their state of policing, and a couple of things that have really sort of starkly come out is there's no capital funding for policing, so if we want to improve buildings, it's really difficult. And also that the level of funding overall is not necessarily going to meet the government's ambitions, so they need to really think carefully how we're funding policing going forward. And as Chair, you will know they've attempted 2 funding formula reviews in the last governments and not got anywhere with that. It's off the table with this government for a funding formula review, but we do have a whole national framework around police reform and what that might look like going forward with the build of a national policing centre. So there is quite a lot of change going on at the moment, but it doesn't stop us day to day worrying about our estate and the buildings that people are in and how we can improve and maintain them. So I think I'll just give you that little flavour and then I'll take questions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner. Do we have anyone who would like to ask a question? Councillor Thomas.
A very quick, just to check on facts on the report, Commissioner, if I may. Have we got 27 or 26 public inquiry facilities? Because in your previous report, you referred to 26, and in this report, so you've either found one in your estate's portfolio, or...
I think it's because that's the plan to have 27, rather than, I think we've got 26 at the moment, but yeah.
Anybody else got any more questions? No, I certainly have. I've asked for this to come on the work programme, Commissioner, because you know I have great concerns regarding Plymouth's estates when we look at Charles Cross. It's not just about the building, as you've previously said. It's people's work placement, and they spend an awful lot of time in there. Plus the fact about their custody suites as well is not. This is a personal thing. I don't feel that the buildings are fit for purpose. So I certainly will be carrying on putting pressure on you to look at Plymouth of how we can make better estates here in Plymouth. I don't know if you want to add anything about your thoughts about Plymouth, of where you would be looking going forward regarding the estates, please.
Just a couple of things, Chair. I think first thing is, in our view, they are fit for purpose because they're functioning and working as police stations and custody suite that we've got at Charles Cross. We are about to invest into the custody suite, so that will be closed for a period of time while we do that, so that's going to be a bit discombobulating. And we have done investments over the years in Charles Cross to improve some of the estates. It's not my most worrying building that I've got. As you see over the page, you've got that, although they're all of the same age, we've got some that's sort of 50 to 60 years old, and we do have, those are the ones, so Newquay, Camborne, and Torquay are in a worse state than Plymouth. But I completely get your tone, and if there was an opportunity ever to do something that didn't mean I had to fund it all, then there may well be something that we could look at. Things like one public estate, or something where there can be an investment somehow, but I haven't got the money to do massive shift changes on that at the moment. I just didn't want to get your hopes up too highly, Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner. Councillor Penberthy, before you come in, have you gone into talks with the local authority to see if it could be a joint venture? Maybe we've got the land or something like that. I haven't got an open checkbook and I'm not offering that. But what I'm saying is in times like we are in at the moment, it's about partnership working.
I know the Chief Constable's had some discussions with Plymouth City Council, but at the moment, in terms of, I've had experiences where I've moved police stations out of the centre and to out of town, and that doesn't help with visibility, and so we've got some challenges about where we would place it. I know it's a high value site, the Charles Cross site, but a bit like in Exeter, we've moved one that was near the town centre at Heavytree Road out to Middlemore. It doesn't really build confidence in communities by moving them out of the visibility of the towns. But again, I'm always open to if there is an opportunity.
Thank you, Commissioner. And I don't need to remind you, but Plymouth has huge tourist attractions in the summer, and as you know, it can become very difficult for yourselves, for the police with summer policing, but that's where our estates become even more busier than what they are. But I will leave it there. I think you know my views on it. Councillor Penberthy.
Thank you, Chair. Commissioner, it was interesting reading this report. I thought there was one glaring and one almost glaring omissions. The first is that Devon and Somerset Fire and Rescue are currently consulting on their own estate. And you're talking about joining up services. You know, if Devon and Somerset are looking at Western Mill and a potential relocation, because that site is not fit for purpose, what does that mean in terms of potential joint relocations and actually releasing sites potentially from Crown Hill and somewhere else, because they need to be right on road networks too. So I think that the link across to another key blue light service doing an estates review with public consultation at the moment is something that you should be looking at rather than not be being mentioned. And obviously I'm unaware of any thoughts that Cornwall might be having in those areas. The other is, it is no secret that Homes England are currently master planning with the City Council, not only the city centre, but the areas around the city centre. Given that, I would have thought you should have made some reference to making sure that you were being engaged in that process, because you have a piece of real estate in the city centre. If the city centre is being redesigned to put 10,000 new homes and all the associated infrastructure in it, that gives you a golden opportunity to use Charles Cross. So I think there are two bits there where the public sector is actively working quite publicly, and you haven't mentioned either. And I think it might be useful for you when you're thinking about estate to at least have on your horizon what's going on, and if you're putting reports together, to actually be talking about what you're doing in relation to other public body-led estate regeneration or major redevelopment opportunities.
Thank you, Chair. Just to say, my office sits on the one public estate for Devon, where all those conversations are being had. So there is an engagement in Devon. I'm not actually sure of the Cornwall equivalent. They haven't got a Cornwall equivalent in the same way. But we have been actively engaged with Devon and Somerset Fire and Rescue Service. I think the issue for us, in our experience, is I just need them to tell me what their priorities are, and then I can engage with them. Otherwise, I end up spending a lot of time talking to a lot of people, getting nowhere, which has happened in the past. I'm also engaged with the NHS down in South Devon because of the estate problems I've got down there. So when we need to make a priority of which areas we want to fix, and then the other agencies do, and we see how we can join up. At the moment, we're on the one public estate meeting for Devon, so all of those sorts of conversations about how to maximise the public estate is being drawn through there.
In which case, that's quite surprising not to have been in this report very explicitly, because that really matters. But given that Fire and Rescue have been quite explicit, and the City Council and Homes England have been quite explicit, and the latter is a 20-year plan, because it is a major master plan. You can't redesign a city overnight. And Devon and Somerset are actually talking about what their next phase of developments are, so that they are setting their priorities. I would have thought those two did tick those boxes and would have been mentioned, but none of that was actually in your report. So it looks like you are working in isolation, and that doesn't look good for anyone thinking about how best to work as either as the public sector, but more widely.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Loudon.
Commissioner, at Barnstable, you talk about a Wernix temporary solution. I've had to Google it, and it comes up saying likely a misspelling for several different entities, a region of the brain, which I suspect that's not, or a UK-based modular building company. Is that what this is? Right.
Chairman, it's like a mobile unit custody suite. So it's a lift and shift. It's not a built from scratch one.
Not a van on wheels.
No.
Thank you. Councillor Ashton.
Thank you, Chair. Commissioner, perhaps there ought to be a Cornwall discussion. If there isn't one now, which I think you said there isn't, perhaps there ought to be. And so I just leave that with you in the chair. Can I just, for clarification, you stated that, we accept that there isn't any allocation of capital funding as such that comes directly to you. Is that correct?
There is no government money that comes to us for capital. We've got a £26 million capital programme, though, that we've got planned.
Yes.
So it's the money from policing generally that we use for it, and borrowing.
So that's what I was coming on to, that you do have the money that you allocate from your budget into that capital programme, which then is for you then to decide how to spend that and improve. Is that maintenance included in that as well? Or?
Yeah, it's probably worth me saying, in the medium-term financial strategy that we bring to you a budget, and you can look at this last one that we just did in February, it'll show you what we've got in there in terms of the capital programme. You'll be able to see all of the things that we've got prioritised over the years of where that spend sits.
Okay. And finally, Chair, if I may, does in the new review, which you talked about earlier on policing generally, are you expecting to see capital funding emerging through that? Pretty sure, yeah. Okay. Thank you.
We have Councillor Lever.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you for the report as well. I'm glad that the Barnstable one was picked up. I just wanted to reflect back as a North Devon District Councillor and a County Councillor, and this site falls within my County Council division, that actually, and also actually I sit on the planning committee at Devon, North Devon District, which granted permission for this site. Actually, feedback that I get is that it is a very welcome place, and that it doesn't have the problems of the previous building near the old civic centre, which is now demolished. So actually, it doesn't rain in on them through the roof, and that's a good thing. I suppose my question, I should say from a county perspective, we're working to make sure that some changes in some of the road network enable access to and from this temporary police station, because actually it's really valued where it is. I suppose my question is about, are there plans for it to become something more permanent?
Thank you, Chair. I'm delighted you've said that, Councillor Lever, because we've only got temporary permission to be there, and it's forcing me to find an alternative solution because of the planning arrangements. So if there is warm words maybe considered, it would be lovely to have a conversation.
I would very much welcome that conversation.
Thank you. Councillor Wright.
Thank you. I just want to pick up on the sort of one sentence here about the custody centres. So I can see, obviously, about the money that you're putting into making the centres themselves compliant. But it's just a sentence about, regardless of the actual buildings themselves, a lot of the time there's not enough staff to actually take people into custody, so the doors get closed. I think that's quite a big thing to be concerned about, and it's sort of managed to get its way into this report actually about the buildings. And I can see, I think you said there's a report coming back later in the year. 2 parallel pieces of work underway. One about the costs and operating models. That's due to report back in late 2025, it says. Would that report be coming to us? And is one question. And the second question is, will that report actually look at this issue of not having enough staff so regardless of how much money you put into making the custody suite nice, if you can't open the doors, there's a bit of a tension there.
Chairman, I'll have to check whether we can bring a report to you about what we're doing in relation to that once we've got the information. I think there's a few concerns for me. We've got 6 custody suites, more than any other force. It's because of our geography again, and part of our challenge of our sparsity problem. They're all of a particular age. The fact that they haven't fully been compliant, especially even in the the outside space, if you like, that a detainee is allowed to access because of potential ligature points, it means they have to be supervised, which means it needs more staffing. So we've had some challenges, and the whole model of custody at the moment, which has been functioning okay over the years, but is on an overtime model. So we've got people doing lots of hours in custody, so you've got to have a custody sergeant, to run a custody suite 24/7, you need multiple sergeants available to be able to do that, and the detention officers, which we've been recently recruiting for, by the way, in Devon and Cornwall Police. So there's a lot of things we need to look at in this. There is absolutely no savings to be made in custody. It is an expensive thing that we have to deliver, and we're just trying to work out, because some of the biggest challenges we've got in custody isn't just the staffing for Devon and Cornwall Police, it's the partner agency contracts that are not being fulfilled for the detainees' safety. So some of the healthcare contracts, they can't get the healthcare workers to be there. The legal aid, they can't get a defence solicitor to be there. The appropriate adult service led by local authorities won't cross boundaries from Cornwall into Plymouth if we have to take someone to Plymouth as a detainee. So we've got detainee safety, welfare and rights not being met sometimes, and that's the challenge we're trying to solve by doing the report that we're doing to see what we can do. I don't think we can solve the contractual issues with our partners. With the healthcare, they just cannot recruit. We could throw money at them, they just cannot recruit the workers. So we do need to really think about how we deliver this custody provision, but be more than happy to bring back a report around what we found and let you see that.
Thank you, Commissioner. And I think that's where I was saying, like, fit for purpose was probably the wrong word, but that's what I was trying to say. You've obviously got, problems with the buildings being old and, not a welcoming place as a work placement. They do spend a long time in the buildings for the right reasons. And then it's about the custody side of stuff. I'm probably still very green in envy after going to the opening of Exeter. I know you did say it was a new building 20, do you know what I mean? But it's fabulous compared to what we're seeing throughout the Devon and Cornwall. All right, so probably needs to be a bit more clear with that. There's no more questions. You've got one? Yeah,
so it's just more a confirmation of the requests from Councillor Ashton about actually Cornwall, making sure that we're in on those conversations around the estate. So I'll have a conversation when I go back about trying to get in touch with you. But one final thing, and it's just really almost with my health and wellbeing hat on, because I'm chair of that as well. It's about community hubs. And I know from a health and wellbeing point of view, we in Cornwall, we're trying to very much encourage community hubs. I'm sort of wondering why we're not thinking outside the box, really, when it comes to police presence. I'm not necessarily talking about custody suites, I'm talking about people, it's hearts and minds, isn't it? Understanding where the police are being seen. And I only saw something on the news last night in Dorset, where obviously they've got a van going around with a mobile police station with some PCSOs manning it. I was just sort of wondering, it's a very quick question, but in some ways, how can we think outside the box to make sure that we are providing a police presence? So it's about working with community hubs on the health side. I'm more than happy to try and encourage that in Cornwall. Obviously, I can't necessarily help with Devon. And also, can we sort of provide those sort of temporary visions that, particularly through the summer when we have a huge amount of tourist influx on, so that it's not really an estate, is it? But we could buy a van, couldn't we? I'm just putting it out there. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of things, really. Firstly, I visited the Penzance Safe and Well Hub a few weeks back. What an incredible and amazing result in 1 year. Finding a build, they've got people off drugs and alcohol in 1 year, and I've met them, and it was fantastic. And the efforts that went into that to help people, particularly Penzance, absolutely outstanding. I think that's a really good strategy to have, and I'd love to have that all across Devon as well. The Safe and Well Hubs is really quite an exciting, sustainable, I think, option for our people who are struggling the most. Just to say, Nikki Allen, she used to chair the estates meeting for Cornwall, so I don't actually know what's happened there. So it'd be really helpful if we can re-plug back into some of that. And just so you know, the force have purchased 2 rather nice vehicles to do temporary sort of police stations in and to go out and around. We've just actually asked only the other week, we want to see the delivery plan of where they're going and what they're using them for, because they were very expensive resources. And I also gifted my van to Torquay Police to use as temporary police station when we were doing the street focus there. So there is some efforts, but we haven't seen the plan of where they're using it yet. So perhaps that's something we could share with panel members once we've got that plan in advance.
Okay, thank you. Through that discussion, is there anyone who's got any recommendations that they would like to make to this item? Councillor Wright.
Sorry, because it may have been covered. Just that, about bringing back that report about custody. I'm not sure if that's a recommendation or if we put it on the work plan. But
it's been noted.
It's been noted. Right, thank you.
And on that same point, could you just ensure that the report includes the welfare aspect as well? That's a critical part. Thank you.
Councillor Penberthy.
Thanks. And a clearer link when the Police and Crime Commissioner is doing work on estates and publishing stuff to other work within either one public estate or other work that is public sector driven on regeneration or estates that can help her achieve her ends as well.
Thank you, members. So the item was to note the report. Are members happy just to note with those recommendations that come alongside? Yes? Okay, so moving on to item 7 is the Police and Crime plan for 25 to 29, and it's the performance report. So once again, I'd like to hand over to the Commissioner, please, for this item.
Thank you, Chairman. We've covered a little bit of the police recorded performance in the public contact monitoring report, so I won't dwell on the police performance. I'm going to dwell more on the crime. As we know, there's been an increase in crime on Devon and Cornwall, and we've touched on it a little bit earlier in the public contact report about people much more easily able to get through to us. But you'll see in particular the rises have been around violence against the person. That rate has increased from 26.4 to 28.7 per 1,000 people, and particularly theft offences, of which is not necessarily burglary, it is actually shoplifting largely, but things are on the rise. So I think it's quite important that we as a collective ensure our community safety partnerships are working well and all the partners are contributing to them at the local authority level, and I'd be more than happy to help if some of them are not. I will just focus in on a couple of things that I think are important. One in particular is in relation to violence against the person. We've been talking about the increase on violence for years at this panel, and I recently held the disruption workshop for violence against women and girls at Exeter Racecourse, where we invited loads of partners to come up with some innovative ideas to try and disrupt the perpetrators as opposed to ask the victims to do more. We've got to move away, in my view, from asking victims to do more, and we've got to do more about chasing and dealing with these perpetrators, which was very well received. It's in my update report, but I just wanted to touch on that because I would say there was a few bits of innovation that came through there, but we're still way off some real meaty ideas that might actually make a major disruption. But once the chief exec of my office, Fran, has got a plan on the back of that, and we're bringing a lot more of the voluntary sector partners in front of funders and investors as well to help solve some of their sustainability issues of being able to fund some of the things that they might want to do more of. But it'd be really useful to bring back the plan we do have for you to see as well, but we could share that offline if need be. I always am happy to see an increase in drug offences because they're only detected when the police do stop and search or have actually taken some action. And as you know, we've been focused quite a lot around Op Scorpion regionally and done a number of phases of that over the past few years. So I'm not concerned about an increase in drug offences other than pleased that it shows police activity. The other one to pick up though, which we're lower compared to England and Wales around antisocial behaviour. When we went into COVID, antisocial behaviour dropped quite massively because nobody was out, A, witnessing it, or B, making it happen, other than a few of the summer occasions when people were let back out again, and we had a few incidences like on Exmouth Beach and a few other places, and Plymouth Hoe, you know, inundated with people at one point. But we still got an issue about really getting antisocial behaviour solved in terms of that one doorway in. There isn't one doorway in. It's really confusing for people. And this is only in relation to the elements of antisocial behaviour that the police deal with. So this is not the full picture of antisocial behaviour. And as you and I all know, there's far more antisocial behaviour going on than the stats ever appear to show. So I think we've got a lot more work to do around dealing with antisocial behaviour, even though it looks like we've got a low rate. And then finally, just on the police performance scorecard around reduce the rate of repeat victims, you'll see there, because I was alarmed, because whenever we talk about repeat victims, we normally talk about domestic abuse repeat victims, and the repeat victim rate has always been around 20-ish% over the years. I saw 46.9, or is it 49% right now, and I was alarmed. I just want to reassure you, which is why I'm going to do a bit of extra scrutiny on this. This does include businesses, and a lot of our businesses are multiple repeat victims of shoplifting or multiple repeat victims. So I'm going to get that broken down, which I'll bring back into the next report for you so that we can fully understand it, because I was alarmed at that rate, but it does include all of our top big stores that are multiple victims. I'll leave that there for you, Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner. I've got Councillor Loudon first, please.
3 points, please. Small. So looking at Appendix A, the plan summary. So at page 30, we've got the police recorded crime. And what you set out there is our force. You then compare and contrast to England and Wales average. Elsewhere in the summary, you quite helpfully compare us to the MSF. And I'm just thinking MSF, you can put it alongside England and Wales, but I think that would be quite useful, please. Then if I turn to page 31 and the third bullet point, 1, 2, 3, the increase in total crime in D&C is inconsistent with the national trend. Why? So I suppose my question relating to that is why have we got the second highest crime rate in the MSF? So again, you'll see a theme coming here. And then my final question relates to page 32 and the 7th bullet point, sorry. And again, it's violent crime, it's the MSF. Why are we up? Why is national down? So just trying to put a little bit of flesh on those bones, if you would.
Thank you, Chair. So there's a couple of things. Some is experience and judgment anecdotally, and some is I'm not sure they know quite yet. So let me just give you a few thoughts on it. Definitely we should put the MSF on that front page. In fact, they hadn't put the England and Wales when I saw the original report, so I got them to put that and then didn't realise we didn't put that one on there. All forces record crime to a different level of confidence. So at the moment, as you know, one of the reasons Devon and Cornwall Police went in to engage with His Majesty's Inspectorate is because the recording of crime was less than 95%. I think it was about 88% at the time they went in to engage. They're up to about 90% now. It is a very bureaucratic, lengthy, difficult process to do, but that area of actually better recording every crime makes a difference to the crime rate. So that I will say there will have been a change because they've improved the recording of crime over the last 2 years particularly, so that's made a difference. From previous experience with previous chief constables who have been here a long time, they always reminded me that Devon and Cornwall, and it's a bit about being on the peninsula, is that nationally you'll see an increase in crime happening and we won't. And then as that goes down, we tend to follow on a slow rate behind. And so there's this slight delay in the way of what's happening nationally with what happens in Devon and Cornwall. That's anecdotal, but from experience of a number of chief constables who recognise the way that the crime trends work within Devon and Cornwall. But then finally, in particular, I think the MSF, what does it stand for again? Something most similar force, that's it, isn't it? I was going to say something like friend, but I would call them maybe friends, those forces that are there. We've always prided ourselves on having one of the lowest crime rates. We've always been 1, 2 or 3 in the country, and we're at 9 at the moment. So I'm not too worried, but I will be if the rate continues to increase and we don't seem to be making a difference. The one I'm most worried about of the crime is domestic abuse, because it's been increasing over the years, and we cannot use improved confidence as an excuse anymore. When crime rates not, if burglary goes up, they end up doing an operation that sorts out what's happening with burglary. Domestic abuse has been going up for 30 years, and our problem is that I can't say you could say improved confidence is the reason that's going up. So I think that's why we need to do the disruption, and we need to tackle it as though it is a crime on the rise. So I don't know if that helps, but just trying to give you a little bit of sort of context for some of it.
Okay, thank you. Gordon.
Thank you. Gordon Czapieski, Mid-Devon District. A couple of questions, Commissioner. ASB reporting, I believe you're looking at providing more detailed ASB reporting in the future. It'd be good to have a heads up on that. It will save me asking again. And secondly, do you have any figures on drug rehabilitation? As I recall it, some time ago in custody suites, all detainees were offered potential drug rehabilitation. Is that service still offered? If so, do you have any statistics, take up, that sort of thing? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. As you know, you've got a theft report here to give you a bit more detail of a theme in the police and crime plan. We'll be bringing you an antisocial behaviour one as well. I think it probably identify a number of gaps that local authorities might be able to help with as well, but we'll bring that to a future. Probably will be the next panel meeting. I think ASB is due. No, violence is the next one, so it'll be the one after that as ASB. In terms of the drug, I don't have drug rehab stats, because that is for the local authorities through public health. With their drug, they fund the drug treatment. The issue, what they used to be offered in custody is not the same as it used to be. So they have access to a healthcare worker if they are a drug addict when they arrive, or an alcoholic and they need some treatment and help in the custody suite. But at the moment, there will be referrals to drug treatment, but they're not prioritised in the same way like they used to be years ago. It would be immediately prioritised into drug treatment, and people would fail it because they weren't ready for it, but it was a pushed scheme. That doesn't happen in quite the same way now. I currently fund a little bit of top-up funding towards local authorities for those who are in the, if you like, offending cohort, but I really struggle to really understand how they're prioritising those offenders. So I have said I might look to withdraw that funding from local authorities and commission something directly myself, but that's a conversation still yet to be had.
Yes, Colin.
Just to go back to the ASB, the reason for asking is if we can give informative figures and publish them, I would like to think that would encourage better reporting, more reporting, and more focus, because the range of ASB goes from very extreme to almost benign, but it's a massive range, and it's quite confusing for members of the public. And if they see figures and we can measure trends, then we'll know we're being successful or not. Thank you.
Chair, just to say that your community safety partnership is where this occurs. So the community safety partnership will bring the council data alongside the police data, and you'll get a much richer picture at that community safety level. So that's where the opportunity really lies, I think.
Okay, quite a lot of people on the list. So again, can we just keep to a straight question and a straight answer, please? Councillor Penberthy.
Thank you, Chair. A couple of quick points. On page 26 on your nice little infographic, you talk about communities are not disrupted by antisocial vehicles and road use. This is now becoming almost a daily issue in terms of casework around antisocial vehicles and their impact on residents and businesses and visitors. It's quite often that one vehicle might pass a test, but once you get a pack of them marauding, it makes a massive difference, especially in historic environments, which tend to echo a lot. it would be really helpful, because those are moving vehicles. There's not a lot that councils can do, but it's councillors who end up on the end of that. So I think a better understanding for all of us of what you're realistically doing about vehicles would be really useful, and what you're asking the police to do, so that we can then tie that up with local policing to make sure that your intention is happening. And the second, just in terms of broader antisocial behaviour, it's great when we have clear hold build or hotspot policing. I'm not sure that a short intervention is enough to change behaviour. And what we are seeing in the hotspot policing areas and clear hold build locally here is that actually those assertive first stages are stopping too soon. Communities have got used to nothing or a reduction and are now actually finding it's worse, because their perception was, oh, it's getting, and now, so actually it's having a negative impact, because people are saying, what's the point? Because nothing ever changes. So just a bit of a plea, if you're going to do stuff like that, 3-6 months just isn't enough to change the behaviour substantially of people who are going to be causing that low-level, consistent antisocial behaviour quite often in the public realm. Thanks.
Chairman, thank you. I can share with you some of my thinking of where it's going around the antisocial, because Chief Exec's not aware of some of this yet, so I can share some of my thinking. But just to quickly start with the hotspot, I don't know whether it's the clear hold build that's different, but hotspot is for a full year. So there shouldn't be a 6 month, and actually we're in the second year of it, so they've been having it now for a year and a half at the moment. And the aim, if you recall, was to try and make this business as usual. So I think with the Chief's push to get more officers to the front line, this should be happening regardless of the money. Okay, at the moment it's being done through overtime, and it needs to be done through the day job. So the Chief's got a bit of a challenge on his hands. And we do know, because the Chief has been very much involved in lecturing abroad around hotspot policing and with Cambridge University, and it doesn't displace it to other areas, which is quite interesting, because that's always the original thought as well, that it would displace the crimes and things to other. It doesn't. It actually does reduce the crimes, allegedly, according to the academic research. So we'll wait and see on that one, Councillor. It might be worth you engaging with Councillor John Stevens, who is part of our Vision Zero now. We're really excited, got new councillors who's joined the Vision Zero, and we had an excellent presentation this week around the noise camera that has got to the point of almost purchasable options. So they've been developing it with the police, and that's a game changer, absolute game changer. So I'm really excited about what we could do with that, because I know you've got particular noise issues in Plymouth that you've raised multiple times here, and that noise camera seemed to be talked about a lot and didn't get anywhere. We had the presentation of the level of research they've gone into and the checking and quality assurance that what they're doing is picking up the right noise of the right things. Absolutely brilliant device if it becomes affordable. So we need to find out now what that cost is going to be. But there was a lot of appetite from the local authorities around the table, all the highways officers and the councillors that were there. Where my thought is going a bit about the antisocial behaviour is we've got a number of young people who are also taking cars without consent, driving without a driving licence, doing some of these things. There are some options of some education and support that we can give to those young people early that has worked elsewhere. So I am exploring, this is what I've not spoken to the Chief Exec about yet, is what we could put into the youth justice system. Because at the moment, those young people under 18 will get a fine. And that's not really the solution to the behavioural problem that they've got of what they want to do with driving these cars. So I think there's an opportunity to do more around helping young people succeed behind the wheel of a car rather than fail. So I think there's something there that we can look at a bit more. And so the antisocial driving in particular was dealing with the speeding in villages and towns, and it is particularly the noise that I'm really sort of focused on, which isn't a police issue, but the police are happy and have worked with that noise company, the camera company that has developed the noise camera to actually do this as a collective, because they also recognise it's an absolute, they can discard the vehicle if they do it more than once, you see. So it's a really good incentive to solve.
Okay, Chris, do you want to come back very, very quickly?
Just very quickly, it's great on one vehicle, and it's not only young people. What happens if you've got 6, 7, 8 very large motorbikes with quite boomy exhausts all at the same time. Not one of them's breaking the law, not one of them is being antisocial, all of them together are making an issue. And I think what we need to start thinking about is how do we tackle group behaviour rather than individual behaviour. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Chris. Councillor Lever, please.
Thank you, Chair. And again, thank you for the report. I have to say I'm somewhat horrified to discover, and I probably should have known this before anyway, that the figures for domestic abuse and have continued to rise for 30 years. I think that is absolutely horrifying. And I would agree with you that it's probably not just because people now have more confidence in reporting, but that actually it is far too frequent within our society. I kind of wanted to make a little bit of a link and kind of just raise a question about linking that, and is there, in your view, is there any link or is there any data to suggest there might be a link between that and particularly what young people seem to be experiencing on social media about pushing of misogynistic kind of thinking of, you know, I don't need to explain what I mean by that, both in terms of impact on behaviours and understanding of the world and their role within it of young men and also of young women. You know, it's quite concerning, and I know that schools are trying to tackle that, but it's pretty tough.
Chairman, I feel sorry having this conversation about men. First thing is, it's not all men, but it is nearly all women. So that's why we get frustrated about it. It is nearly all women that will be a victim of it in some shape or form, from whether it's street harassment to abuse in the home. But it's not all men. So it's really difficult to have this conversation to not upset the decent men that are in our society, but we need them to step up and help. And one of the things that my chief exec is doing on the back of the disruption workshop is seeing how we can pull all of these men's groups that have started to establish, Band of Brothers, Man Down, there's a range of them, pull them all together and really elevate them and get them into schools. I don't usually like saying get into schools because it's like the answer to every problem, but we actually need some decent men to make their presence felt amongst men. And I think we've got quite a journey to go on this.
Thank you. Councillor Tyman.
Thank you. Thank you. There's obviously been an alarming increase in the number of shops everywhere selling illegal tobacco and vapes. I think it's been a particular problem in Torbay. And you could argue that each sale of an illegal product is a crime, but that's taking a very broad statement of what a crime is. What I really would like to know is how we can monitor that and how that feeds into the statistics. What is recorded as a crime? The police are spending more and more time on helping monitoring that, and may I express our thanks to the fact that 6 shops in Torbay, only this week, we've got a court order to close them down. So that's real progress, so that's great, and thank you. But how can we monitor progress on this increasing problem, not just at a local level, but across the whole of the force?
Thank you, Chair. There's a national programme called Operation, I want to say Machination. Machination. I can never get the word right. The National Crime Agency, and it's a serious and organised crime organised national operation where they're working with trading standards to actually clamp down on this from a national perspective. So they've obviously got some good intelligence and information about the crimes that are happening in relation to this, but they're often fraud crimes, and in trading standards they're about what they're selling. So it does fall between the two stools, which is why they must work together. And excellent progress, hearing that happening today. But it does need the intelligence from the community to come in around it, and it does need the police to act with trading standards. So you can see already there's been an improvement. How we better monitor it overall, I would say again, at your community safety partnership level, it would be at least great if you can have a picture of what your understanding is your problem in your patch, because you're able to access trading standards as the local authority as well as the police. So it'd be quite a good way to try and monitor it through that route.
Thank you. Councillor Ashton.
Thank you, Chair. Commissioner, I just wondered at what point would we be getting any sort of feedback or information about rural crime and thefts, particularly. Just thinking about there seems to be an increase in that area, and also tradespeople with loss of tools and equipment, that sort of thing. I note that there are initiatives like Smart Trace and Farm Watch and things like that that are happening at the moment. But in terms of stats, is that available? Will that be coming to us at some point, or?
If it's any helpful, it's on our work programme. We've got it coming to us, if that's any help to both of you.
Great, so it'll come to us at some point.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chair.
Unless the Commissioner wanted to add to anything, but I just was trying to help out here.
Thank you, Chair, that is helpful. I was just going to point out that every theme in the plan, you will get a rural element in there. What I will do is go back and ask for stats around it, if it's possible, to include that in, because we've got on our roads, in our homes and neighbourhoods, you know, in our rural communities, so we need to see if we can break the stats down in that way so that it's in the thematic report as well. I will try and do that too.
Okay, and finally, I just would like to, Commissioner, my question would be on page 26. We see a decrease in 1% in public confidence in the policing. You know, at the moment, we're seeing obviously the rises that we've already talked about today at this meeting, but I know that we're obviously seeing a high rise of hate crime, and I know you don't record that in your thing, in your plan. But it is quite alarming. I know it's only 1%, but that 1%, you know, we don't want it to decrease anymore. And my question then would be to you is, how are you trying to improve more public confidence in the policing, please?
Thank you, Chair. You sound like the Home Secretary, former Home Secretary, whose number one priority was public confidence in policing. What I will say is, I mean, I'm not alarmed by 1%, but I get it's down rather than up or stable. So I'd still sort of call that pretty stable. I'd say the tolerance level would be if it went down 5% or something like that. So we always generally have fairly high confidence in the measuring that the Devon and Cornwall Police do. It is an independent survey. It is representative sample of the public. So it's not just like my surveys through the budget process are self-selected of those who wish to fill it in, whereas this one is done by representative sample of the population. There's a few things I think that the Chief Constable is aware that he needs to do. One is to push those officers back to the front line, to improve that visibility, to maintain things like hotspot policing as business as usual. But I think if I'm really frank, that we do struggle with things that might happen in the Met in London being reflective as though that's what happens in Devon and Cornwall. And even when we have community tensions here, do you know what? We do all chip in and we all do try and help to minimise it. And we had such a success in the riots, and I don't even like to call it a riot, the civil disorder in Plymouth, but it was nationally declared a riot. That there is the way we worked together on that with both all of the criminal justice agencies, with the local authority, was outstanding. And I always say this because we're on top of it when it goes wrong down here. We are on top of it, and particularly, Chair, Plymouth is always on top of it. As a city, I think you've had so many crises. You're excellent at dealing with an emergency response. So I think getting those visible police officers out, we're going to move into a budget stage now where we're not going to be able to, I don't think, recruit many more police officers above what we've got as cost. As you know, their cost goes up every year. Their pays are agreed nationally, nothing to do with us, and those costs go up and they get an increment every year plus a pay rise. So we're going to have to work out how we're going to sustain the officers we've got at the moment. So I just want to be clear about that and not raise expectations. but we have got the PCSO uplift that's come through the neighbourhood policing grants, and I think you'll start to see with that, I think that will start to be a bit of a game changer, because we know even one PCSO is quite an incredible person and does quite a lot in our communities, so to be able to uplift will be quite dramatic. The other elements around public confidence, if I'm really frank, your general public wouldn't know, but when they report and they're a victim of crime, if they don't get a good service, that completely rocks the confidence in the police. And that is an area the Chief Constable is aware that he does need to improve. They need to improve on investigations. They need to improve on the workload of those officers on the front line doing the investigations. That's, again, why he's pushing more resource as much as possible down to the front line. I think that will really start to make it feel a bit different in the organisation as well. So yeah, I think the Chief's got quite a lot on his hands, but I do want to thank partners, because when we do have a problem, we do work together, and we work together really positively and constructively on behalf of our communities, and it is outstanding work, I think, that we do in partnership down here.
Thank you, Commissioner. Okay, I'm just going to ask, was there anybody has any recommendations in that item that they would like to note? No. Jake, have you picked anything up?
Picked up a few actions. I can stick on the action log.
Okay. Thank you, members. So again, this item is to note. Everybody happy? Yep. Okay. So again, moving on now to item 8, which is the Police and Crime Commissioner's update report. So again, over to you, Commissioner.
Thank you, Chair. I'll just highlight a couple of things and then straight to questions if anybody would like to ask. Just to say that the Safer Streets Summer Focus that's in here didn't come with funding, but it was quite interesting that the government wanted to see what we were all doing in our towns to keep them safe over the summer. And of course, while the bureaucratic burden of doing that, monitoring it and sending it to the government, there's nothing like a bit of visibility about what Devon and Cornwall Police are doing to keep people safe over the summer. So it's actually a helpful process to have to go through. I think, as you know, we've met since the force have been removed from the engaged status of HMI, and also the extension of the Chief Constable willing to stay another year beyond his year contract, which is extremely helpful in terms of giving some stability to the force, and he is doing a really good job. Just one last thing I particularly focus on is I want to say the councillor advocates that join the councillor advocate scheme. I know there was a mess up last time, Chair, around some communication on that, but they've become really invaluable, the seminars that we hold and the sharing of information and good practice that's been happening. So again, I want to thank any of you and your colleagues that are members of the councillor advocate scheme, and you fight for that access to the police inspector, and we scrutinised it recently at the Commissioner's Accountability Board how well the police were supporting councillors through the councillor advocate scheme. So there should be a step change again in terms on the back of that, because it is quite inconsistent across Devon and Cornwall. I'll leave that there actually and go straight to questions, because there's so much in there, Chair.
Thank you. Do I have any questions? Gordon?
Thank you. Just firstly say well done on being removed from the engaged status and for retaining Chief Constable. Another challenge coming up in a couple of years' time to replace him, but we'll go with that. A couple of questions. On street marshals, really excellent. It's working. I understand the routes are based on a formula determined by the Home Office. I'd like to make a suggestion that by reinforcing the hotspots, that's a good thing, but I do believe that stuff will move around and there needs to be a bit more flexibility around it. Is there any possibility of being able to persuade the formula to move into potential hotspots, places where we don't have good statistics, and use the street marshals as one of their tasks, which is to build up the statistics in areas where we think there might be problems. I know that's a nice to have for the future. The other question is, again, the moving of officers to frontline roles, excellent, absolutely the right thing to do, but it does beg the question, what is happening to the jobs that they were currently doing, that they're being taken off and I'm sure the Chief Constable is looking at that very carefully, but this panel, I think, would like reassurance that we're not creating problems for the future by taking the foot off the pedal in one area by pushing people into the other. And I do appreciate the problems with managing budgets. That's what we're here for. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. First thing on street marshals, my office only funds part of the street marshals, so local authorities fund the bulk of them, so they can use them for whatever they wish. The hotspot element is for 15 minutes twice a day, so it's not all day, every day. That's not the actual formula, so there's an opportunity to use it outside of that in other ways, of which many of the local authorities do, and as I said before, the last panel, we are an exemplar for the way that we deliver the Community Safety Accreditation Scheme into people who are not police officers with delegated powers from the Chief Constable. And I'm hoping to bring before you, I'm trying to get a film made at the moment of all the different types and styles of people that we've got with those powers to give you a full range of understanding of what we've got as an opportunity, I think, in Devon, Cornwall and the Isles of Scilly. The second part of your question, I've forgotten what it was.
If I may, it was in moving the officers to frontline roles, what's happening to the jobs they were doing now? I can promise you, so they've just produced, well, they're in the process of producing the one ready for next year, but they do a force management statement, which is something His Majesty's Inspectorate make forces do every year, which is to say, what is the demand going into that service of policing, as you would say, what's the ask of that department, how much resources in there, how well are they performing? That's done every year, and they, on the back of that, identify the strategic risk register. So there will be conversations that the Chief will be having, I'm sure, with his executive about where is the risk minimised or where are we going to maximise the risk, and have those conversations around it. So just to reassure you, I know those conversations are already underway. For example, we had one around firearms licensing where we've got police officers working in firearms licensing, and the Chief's going to have to make a decision about how risky is it to take them out, or do we need to keep them in? And these are the sorts of conversations that are going on at the moment.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Loudon.
Page 69, Commissioner, your accountability board, which, as I understand it, is you, your office, and the Chief Constable and his senior officers. Absolutely fine. I'm just wondering, in order to develop the partnership between yourself and this panel, we have two independent members who sit on this panel, and I wonder whether there is a role for them attending in some form or another, because I think it would allow feedback into this panel from our two independent members that would be able to give us a broader, some more depth to the understanding of some of the key issues that you end up discussing. Not that I distrust you or anything like that, but I think it brings a different perspective back to this panel.
Chair, if I may, in order to be in the sort of meetings that we have, people have to be vetted, and also the sorts of conversations that we have are not for the public domain. I can't. They're not all happy clappy meetings, Councillor Loudon. Just so that you're aware. It's still developing, and we're getting better and better at it. In fact, when you see the assurance statement from the current one that I've just done, where I have looked at firearms licensing on there, there's quite a lot of detail, because I think there was feedback from Mr. Jones, who said that it was quite vague and it just said assured or not assured. So we're making sure that we're putting some useful information in there as well. So that might give you a bit more understanding as to why I'm assured or not assured of what the police are doing at the moment in relation to it.
That to be a no.
Thank you. Councillor Penberthy, please.
Thank you. I just want to go to the firearms licensing bit. It's great that we've got some new guidance, but we do know from previous discussions here that you have far more firearms licenses in your patch than most of your colleagues, and there has been an issue, I think, historically of actually not being able to fully fund the cost of licensing through the licence charges. Whilst it's great that there's a lot more checks being done, what lobbying is happening, or what is the government saying about you being able to charge properly so that those who hold firearms licences pay for the cost of the licence rather than that coming off other policing responsibilities. I think we would probably all support you in ensuring that that money wasn't being taken out of other areas of policing, when in other licensing activities it's expected that licence holders pay the cost of the licence application.
Thank you, Chair. Good point and question. Just so you're aware, we at the recent Commissioners' Accountability Boards, we've got around at the moment 27,000 licences that we deal with in Devon and Cornwall. Because if you remember, we split from Dorset now, so we don't manage it as a three-county entity. We were excited by the fully funded, fully costed for firearms licensing fees. Obviously, they did go up, but it only funds 43% of the department. And again, with these changes, and there's so many changes that have come in the new guidance, we're going to need a resource to actually implement some of these changes as well. So I believe there are conversations taking place nationally, and the government is very open-minded on this, I believe, to even up the licence fee even more. So there is conversations happening about that right now.
Great. I wonder whether you could keep us posted as those go on, because it might be before the next meeting. It might be that some of us wish to write to our MPs to encourage our MPs to support the government in getting you closer to full cost recovery on licensing.
Chair, would you like my office to draft a letter that might be helpful to go to MPs with some of the facts and figures in there for you?
I think that would be really helpful. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Arthur. Thank you, Chris. So, Vice Chair? No? So if I could just make a comment on page 60 and going on to 61 about the Councillor's Advocate. I have to say I'm quite proud to see Plymouth taking part and supporting you on that with some of the officers that sit in my portfolio. So, but keeping on to page 61, and I know we have to be very cautious how you answer this, Commissioner, but I'm interested in 4.2. About, I would like to know how you're working more to support children and adults victims of sexual violence, please.
Sorry, I just asked if she'd signed a contract yet, and she just said nearly. I've nearly signed it. We're trying to do something a bit above and beyond where we should be going with this at the moment, because we know with local government reorganisation, some of the councils that are contributing to a 5-year contract at the moment with my office around sexual violence services for adults and children, it is risky business. NHS England is contributing, and also the Independent Care Board is also giving some money towards it. We've got a number of voluntary sector organisations across Devon and Cornwall and the Isles of Scilly that are unstable with funding at the moment in relation to sexual violence. So just for your awareness, we've tried to bring this in to bring some stability to the market around that. So that's the first thing. The second thing we've got, as you may be aware, there's also investments in independent sexual violence advisors, and independent domestic violence advisors, and they've been running now for, I think the contract was it's been running quite a few years now, so that's very stable, that service. I think we've still got a long way to go though in terms of really trying to disrupt it, and that's where I think we need to get to, is what are those ideas to actually disrupt the violence that's happening in our communities. And I'm particularly worried about children because they don't get they don't get the best service. There is only one sexual assault referral centre for children, which is in Exeter. It is a centre of excellence, which is what they planned for it to be through the NHS, but there is only one, and we need to work through how we can better support children. This contract will assist, but I am anxious that we've got to do a lot more disruption.
And so my recommendation on that to yourself, Commissioner, would be, if the panel supports this, is that we're kept updated about where you're going, Commissioner, with it, please. Yeah.
Next meeting we have the violence profile bringing towards you, so we'll put some information in there.
Thank you very much. Okay, out of item 8, do we have any other recommendations from panel? No. So panel happy to note that report? Yep, thank you. Thank you, Commissioner. So we're moving on to item 9, which is the complaints against the Commissioner. And on this occasion, I'm going to be handing over to Fran, please.
Thank you, Chair. Just to point out to members before we start, there is actually a drafting error in the report because you'll see I can't count. And we took out a line, which was last time's numbers, and forgot to change the total. So my apologies for that. So actually that reflected the 2 that I brought to you in the previous panel. So you'll see that there have been 15 since the last panel. 14 relate to one incident, which actually reflected from the last panel, which were related to the Commissioner's comments that were made about ongoing investigations in Cornwall, and the other one was in relation to an interview that the Commissioner gave in relation to cannabis. Both of those I've made inquiries as monitoring officer and drafted responses which the Chair has signed off, and I believe you've been provided with those responses, so there are no further action required on either, Chair.
Thank you. Everyone happy to move on? I think this is probably a better way of working if you are able to see the details of that complaint prior to panel. It just saves any confusions there. So we're moving on now to the action log. Does anyone have anything that they would like to raise within the action log, please? Councillor Loudon.
Thank you, Chair. Page 77, item 10, and crave your indulgence on this. I note there that this is about the Commissioner being a bit more sharing open with the panel there. Can I use this point to commend you for sending us the embargoed note yesterday, I think it was, we received it. I think that demonstrates a degree of moving to a more open and partnership relationship, because I have to say I do find it somewhat irritating that police advocates and the press know about things before we do, and I come back to the point, you're not accountable to us, and I get that, but it's about being aware and alert to things, given our role and our links back into our councils and our communities. So thank you.
Thank you. No other... Oh, Gordon?
I'd like to add an action. Is it now the time, or are we coming to that? Yeah. I'd like to suggest that we have a tour of the facility, such as Middlemore. We are going to be asked to make decisions on investment, and it will be very reassuring to have had the opportunity to see some of the fabric of the estate as a general background. I know there's been an offer for visit to custody suites as well, which is much appreciated, and I'll certainly be taking up that offer if I can. I'm not sure if they could be combined in some way, but from an efficiency point of view. But certainly specifically the range at Middlemore, I know that's going to be coming up over the next in the next precept meeting, and a general understanding of what the estate actually is would be good for myself, and I'd like to think some of the maybe the newer members, maybe some of the older members of the panel. Thank you.
Is everybody happy for that to go on in action? Yeah. And I think if I leave, Commissioner, if I leave your team to work alongside Jake, is that okay? Councillor Wright.
Thank you. Sorry, I couldn't find my notes, but there was something in here about the ECC safe bus that was going to come back to us today on the action log. I don't know what page it was on, Councillor.
When it was in operation.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you. Sorry, I wrote it down then and lost it. Just bear with us 2 minutes just while we find it all. Okay, so it is saying about the Commissioner having a word with Exeter City Council. About the safe bus.
About the safe bus.
Chair, if I may, if I recall, we had conversations about needing to give any sort of grant money towards it, and there wasn't a bank account because the community organisation had discontinued.
So safe space.
Oh, safe
Thank
space.
you.
Is that different?
Yes.
Is that why we were
That's why I was confused, thinking
right.
something should have... Yes, so that's
Yeah.
a conversation that we're having outside
Yes.
on that. I'm really sorry, Chair, but that's why I was confused, and then confused everybody else.
That's not a problem.
If it could just be changed to safe space rather than safe bus, because it's two different things. Thank you.
That's okay. As long as everyone has full understanding. That's lovely. We're now going to move on. If everyone's happy with the action logs, I can't see any other hands. No. We're going to move on to item 10, which is the work programme. Jake, do you want me just to pass over as I handed my paperwork over to you?
Thank you, Chair. We had a discussion in the pre-meet about adding something to the agenda in November, and I'll be in contact in every member of the panel just to clarify a few details on what's on the work programme after this meeting.
Councillor Penberthy.
Thanks. I think I'd just like to say publicly what one of those issues was for the reassurance of members of the public, given the current situation. I know you don't like describing last summer's events as riots. The reason I use the term riots is that that's what communities in Plymouth call them. And I want to reflect back to the communities of Plymouth what they feel their experience was. Now we have a whole different set of experiences being felt, not just in Plymouth, but across the whole patch, in terms of both the far left and the far right, and their approach to flags, and the difference between nationalism and patriotism. Given that hate crime is no longer on your crime plan, I think it is important that people across Devon and Cornwall and the Isles of Scilly get to understand your priorities and your approach to the current and growing community cohesion and civil unrest that we are beginning to see bubble, because that's not just for us as councillors, and it's not just operationally for police. I think it's strategically for police as well. I think it's useful, just in terms of anyone watching in on this, that communities who are feeling threatened or vulnerable, whatever their background, or those who are participating in behaviour, understand that we are taking that very seriously. I just wanted not to leave that as an out-of-record conversation, but so people could understand what we were asking to be added. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Penberthy. That's all items on the agenda for today, but before I go, I must apologise. I should have welcomed Councillor Lodge to his first meeting. We look forward to seeing you again, hopefully. If I could thank everybody for their good timekeeping. I hate running over. Before we close, our next meeting will be on the 21st of November. So I hope you all have a lovely weekend. Thank you.